In 2006, Rhonda Byrne released her documentary The Secret, followed quickly by the book, and together they earned more than $300 million. But what exactly is The Secret? And can you really use it to build wealth, or is it a scam? Join us today as we take a look at the law of attraction through the 2006 documentary The Secret. You're listening to Real Stories, Real Problems with Rachael and Roxanne.
Hi, Rachel. How are you today?
I'm good, Roxanne. How are you?
I cannot wait to get into this one. Oh boy.
Yeah, this is so for our listeners who maybe weren't around or weren't paying attention in 2006 and this never landed on their radar. Um, let's talk about some of the other things that were going on in 2006. So, the 2006 Winter Olympics are held in Turin, Italy, and the United Nations General Assembly voted overwhelmingly to establish the United Nations Human Rights Council. Twitter was launched in March of 2006, and we've all seen
Oh,
where that's
yay.
gone. The International Astronomical Union demoted Pluto from planet to dwarf planet.
I'm still not over that.
I know. And North Korea claimed to have conducted its first ever nuclear test. And former president of Iraq, Saddam Hussein, was sentenced to death by hanging. So, in the midst of all of this United Nations, Twitter, North
Mhm.
Korea, Iraq, like all of this, we've received this documentary, The Secret. And this took the world by storm. I remember
Yes.
like my roommate got given a copy of the book by somebody at her work and was sent home telling her that she should totally use it to revamp her life. And like people were really, really into this.
hmm
And I didn't pay it any attention at the time. It wasn't on my radar. The first time I sat down to have any information about this was last week when we decided we were going to do this for this
Right.
podcast. And good God, this was the most frustrating watch I think I've ever.
I tell you, I was watching this thing and I kept doing the John McEnroe, be serious. And it just blew my little mind. So tell us what is the secret, Rachel?
So this documentary is about a concept called the law of attraction. And the law of attraction is essentially it's a spiritual belief that positive or negative thoughts like make positive or negative things happen in your life. And it's based on the idea that people and their thoughts are made of something like energy or pure energy or whatever they're calling it, and that like energy attracts like energy. And so the more positive energy that you put out, the more positive energy comes back to you.
Right.
And this is a lovely one off thought, but there is no scientific evidence, empirical evidence, anything supporting the law of attraction. This is known as to be a pseudoscience or a
hmm
religion couched in scientific language. Um, and just as a heads up from the beginning, disclaimer for our listeners, we are going to be talking about this documentary and the law of attraction and the Church of New Thought spiritual beliefs and kind of all of the people that were a part of this. I am saying up front, if this brings joy to your life, if you enjoy the law of attraction and it makes sense for you, God bless you. I hope
hmm
that you hold on to it forever. I am not judging you for using the secret to make your life better.
Right.
However, my opinions on this are relatively negative. If you're not interested in hearing that, now would be the time to turn this documentary podcast off.
Right. And join us again next week for
Yeah.
something less traumatic. Absolutely. I watched, and this is a long documentary. It was an hour and a half. I think it was the longest one that we've watched so far for our podcast. And I'm watching this thing, and basically it's the power of positive thinking. And absolutely if you have a positive attitude, you're going to have more success because sometimes people do sabotage themselves. But, but let's talk about the rocks and how they cure hepatitis and
Yeah,
just
the thing
yes,
so when this documentary opens, when you sit down and you turn it on, it is a bunch of fast-moving images that like
yes,
give the an illusion to intellectuals from times past, and like this concept that this is almost like Illuminati level secrets that they don't want
yeah,
you to know. It feels very much like within the first 90 seconds, you should look at this and feel like, oh, this is a scam of some sort. It feels like the Primerica, Amway, like
uh-huh,
MLM. It has that feel of you need me to be real into this because you're going to sell me on something very hard and I'm going to make
hmm
it seem mystical and unattainable any other way. And to the point to where when I first put it on and started it, I paused it and went back out to see, was I watching the right thing? Is this actually like a documentary? And then I had to fast forward into it to see, oh yes, eventually people do talk and it's not just this music over images forever. And
And
then,
that's exactly what I did with you. I texted you right when I started watching it. I don't know if I'm right watching the right thing. And you called me and you said, "Yeah, you just hang on." And then the next thing I texted you was, "I feel these people are trying to sell me some Amway products."
yeah,
That was literally what I said.
it has that hard sell feel to it. And anybody who's ever seen Terminator 2, if you've ever seen I'm going somewhere with this, just go with it.
I'm with you. Go
So
ahead.
if you've ever seen Terminator 2, there's this point where they are showing like a video for Cyberdyne, the company that makes these robotic terror arms that are going to turn into robots that are going to come back and be naked Arnold Schwarzeneggers later. Um, and it feels almost like positively oppressive. When you watch it,
Mm,
you know that they are using positive words and images of butterflies and things, but it's wrong. You can feel that there's
yes.
something wrong with this, despite the language and colors and images that they're using to to couch this in. And I
Right.
felt the exact same way watching The Secret as I did seeing that Cyberdyne image in Terminator 2.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and so Rhonda Byrne, the lady who put this all together, she got inspired for creating The Secret because she was reading a book called The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Waddell. It was written in 1910, and it is essentially a whole book about new thought and this law of attraction kind of approach to things.
hmm
And she read it and it moved her. It did something within her that made her feel like she could make her life better. And I love that. Anytime
Yeah,
you
which is
find,
great. Absolutely. If it works for you and it keeps you from wrapping your lips around a Smith and Wesson, awesome. And as long
yes,
as it
that
doesn't hurt anybody else, and that's where we start to get into the craziness.
yeah.
Mhm.
And so she's gathered this group of professionals and experts, and she's put them all together to make this documentary. And they're talking to all of these people. And I have heard of none of them outside of John Gray,
Mhm.
he's the guy who wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and the
Right, right.
75 books that followed about men are from Mars and women are from Venus and children are from Italy or whatever crap it was.
Children of Italy.
like but he's got a bunch of series of follow-ups on the Mars and Venus. Like he had
Yes,
that
Mars and Venus together again, and yeah,
yeah, he's
yeah.
got all of those.
He rode that wave for quite some time. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Jack Canfield, who was the guy who wrote the Chicken Soup for the Soul books. So there were like those couple of people that I saw them, and then when I saw the name, I was like, oh, I know that person. Like this is a name I've heard before and somebody that I understand to exist in the world. Um, And then she talked to a bunch of other people who you kind of just had to go by the caption that this person was a author or this person was a reverend or this person was whatever it was that they said, and they all kind of talked about how the secret helped them in various ways and how they can use it to
Right.
help you. But they made claims so ridiculous that I
Yes.
laughed so loud that my daughter had to come upstairs and be like, "What are you watching? I need to understand because this is the loudest you've laughed in probably a month and a half." And the point at which I was laughing, Roxanne, do you remember the elephant?
Oh, yes. That was just surreal. It was an absolutely surreal moment. Do describe it because
So
listeners, if there are if anybody is still listening to us at this point, they need to go there. They need take us there, Rachel.
they promise, not like you could maybe do great things with this, but they promise if you enact the secret within your life, you will see massive positive change within 30 days. And they're going into this timeline, and then they say, but we're so lucky that the power of positive thought doesn't work right away. And it's a picture of a guy looking at an elephant, like an image of an elephant, and all of a sudden it pops up and it's standing next to him in his bedroom. Like you could physically manifest an elephant if you tried hard enough.
Right, right. You can make a tulpa I'm if I have that ability, I'm not making an elephant. I'm sorry. I'm gonna make Hugh Jackman appear in my bedroom. Sorry, the elephant isn't gonna happen.
Yeah, but they're leaning hard on this. We promise this is going to change your life. There is no talk about, this is a tool that you can use, that this is one of many things that you can use to improve. No, this is the only way, and this will
Right,
make you a multi-bajillionaire who is happy and healthy. You can cure yourself of disease. You could they promise world-changing abilities as
right,
part of the
right. And
secret.
you know, it absolutely will change your life in 30 days because you'll lose your job and all your friends. That's pretty much, yeah, that's a change. Uh,
They hone in on this, and they're sharing quotes from famous people every few minutes throughout this documentary. And the first quote that pops up it's a quote from Ralph
mhm,
Waldo Emerson. They say it's the secret is the answer to all that has been, all that is, and all that ever will be. This is a fake quote. Robert
right,
or
right.
Ralph Waldo Emerson never said this, and this is according to
Nope.
philosophyforlife.org. I went and looked it up. This never came out of Ralph Waldo Emerson's mouth. So I don't know
Right.
who they thought. My guess is it was somebody who was talking about Ralph Waldo Emerson also said this, and they probably misconstrued it and kind of rolled it all together. But they
Yeah.
do this a
Yeah.
couple of times. Like they
Oh,
use
yeah,
a
and as an English professor, I was like, "Cite your sources," and then I'm like, "Okay, that's wrong," and then you sent me the whole breakdown, and I'm like, "Wow, a lot of this is just plain made up, just
made up or
made up."
it's misconstrued. Like there's a Winston Churchill quote that they mention that says, "You create your own universe as you go along. The stronger your imagination, the more variegated your universe." This is a real quote, but he was not
Mhm.
talking about the secret. This
No.
quote comes from a letter somebody had written to him asking him about the debate between creationism and evolution. And Winston Churchill's overall approach was, look, if you love God and the idea of creation from a religious, you know, perspective works for you, don't lose that. If that belief that you will be reunited with people that you love in the beyond, like hold on to that, let that make you happy,
Sure.
but don't
Absolutely.
use that as a reason to eschew science. Don't use that as a reason to say science can't be. These things can exist, can coexist together in the world.
Right. Of course.
And so then they did, the same thing with a Martin Luther King Jr. quote that they take the first step, even if you can't see the whole staircase when you start. It's a misattributed quote. It was said by
Mhm.
Marion Wright Edelman, who was talking about Martin Luther King
About
Jr.
Martin Luther King Jr., sure.
And then, so there was a quote that they said from Alexander Graham Bell, "What this power is, I cannot say. All I know is that it exists." That's a real quote, but there is no indication that he was talking about the law of attraction when he said that. He could
Right.
have been talking about electricity, for all we know. Like we have,
Sure.
that we have no idea what he was talking about when he said that. And then they quoted the Buddha and said, "All that we are is the result of what we have thought." And that's an accurate quote, but it was part of his overall concept of karma and not intended for the purpose of the secret.
Right.
So they do that a lot through throughout this whole documentary. They
Right.
quote people in ways that are not accurate. Like they quoted Carl Jung, "What you resist persists." And that's a real quote, but it was about battling the demons within you, addiction and anger
Mhm.
and all of that sort of stuff. It was not at all about the secret or law of
Right.
attraction at all.
Right.
And so that knowing that from the get-go, that I was sitting there and as I was reviewing these quotes when they came up, that so much of this was wrong or misattributed, and that no editor or anybody, fact checker, nobody looked at this and said, hey, you
Right.
can't say these things, definitely had me, leaning towards this is nonsense and they are trying to sell me something out of this. Uh,
Exactly.
yeah, and then they talked about their three-step process that ask, believe, receive. And they really leaned in on you have to believe that it's already here, it's already happening. You have to believe it with your whole heart. You cannot acknowledge in any way that these negative things are happening around you. And that I don't like that. That that
No,
feels
that's a little dangerous. It's like, trust if I drive off this cliff that I'm going to be suspended in midair and nothing will happen to me. Oh crap, gravity is a thing. Oh, because they basically are saying you can overrule the laws of nature and science and physics just by imagining it in your own head.
yep.
Ah,
And the one that you and I both like came around to was the guy with the gratitude rocks.
yes. The gratitude rock guy. Do tell about the gratitude rock.
So the one of the people who was on this documentary, I'll post his name later, but one of the gentlemen in this documentary was talking about a gratitude rock. He found a rock outside, put it in his pocket, and every time he touched it, he remembered to be thankful for things in his life. And just as from this point, that's an excellent habit. Being
It
thankful for the
is. It's
things
a
that you have.
talisman. Absolutely.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
a wonderful habit, excellent for your mental health. And then he talked about somebody who he had told about gratitude rocks, and his son was dying of hepatitis in like the Congo or someplace out in very rural Africa.
remote
And
area of Africa.
yeah, sub-Saharan Africa. And he went out and found some pretty rocks, things that looked, special, cleaned them up and mailed him to him, and said that later the guy told him that the gratitude rocks cured his son's hepatitis.
That is so dangerous.
It
Oh
is,
God, that is so dangerous. It's like people who trust in faith healing and not doctors, or that if I pray hard enough to whatever God that they believe in, miraculously they will be healed. And it doesn't. It's
yeah.
not, you know.
And the idea that a special rock this guy dug up out of his backyard that just happens to be pretty, if you just touch it, it will cure you, that he is selling this as a healing power is
Hmm.
so upsetting and so incredibly viscerally angering me.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah,
he is how many people are going to die because of this? How many
right.
people are going to ignore problems and they're not going to address it medically? They're going to hold on and hold on and hold on until it's too late and they die.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And like you said, he dug it up in his backyard, but for the low, low price of, I don't even remember.
Oh, 34.99. You can buy one of his
Oh,
backyard rocks for
right.
$35 if you want a
35
gratitude
bucks.
rock. Oh my
Right.
God.
And do you need different rocks for different things? Like, is there the hepatitis rock and then like the COVID rock and the measles rock? I mean, like, can you use the same rock? It's mind-boggling,
Yeah,
you
we're
know?
seeing kind of a modern version of this right now where the anti-vax community
Ugh.
is putting out into the world that vitamin A can cure measles. You don't need a vaccine because vitamin A can cure measles. Except that's not fucking true.
I was
Um,
like, no, they can't. I
um,
mean, vitamin A is important. Eat your green vegetables and your cruciferous vegetables, but no, it's
yeah,
wrong. Oh,
it's
God.
very clear that they have decided they are rejecting the vaccines, the actual medical miracle that has saved
Mhm,
literal millions of lives and
mhm.
hundreds of millions of disability cases over the last, 50, 75 years. And they've decided they don't like that. They have problems with that. And so they are going to create out of nothing an alternative, because if the alternative works, then they're right to reject the vaccine. I understand the logic behind why they feel what they feel and why they're saying what they're saying, but they're wrong, and children
Mhm.
and adults all across the country and all over the globe are going to die because
Hi.
of this.
Right.
And
Absolutely. I mean, the pet rock phenomenon from 1978 or 1979, that was funny. And everyone knew that it was funny. And the pet rock came with its little house and its little name and its a little nest and everything. And it was very cute. Nobody, attributed any major power to it. It was just a fun conversation, novelty thing. And the guy made millions of dollars and, then it died out in a couple of years. But, but this is an entirely different level because it's being sold as medicine, as, a panacea, as a vaccine, basically, you
yep.
know, and
And
it's
they
not.
even talked to one of the people that they talked to in the documentary, one of their experts was a guy named Morris E. Goodman, who was badly injured, had multiple spinal injuries,
Right.
did not think he was ever going to walk again or talk again. They thought he was going to have to communicate by blinking for the rest of his life. And he ended up getting up and walking and, moving on with life, and is completely healed. He attributes that healing to positive thought. And I'm not going to say it wasn't a helpful thing. Like, not getting absorbed in depression and hopelessness when you're in that
Hmm.
situation is super important.
Absolutely.
But the thing that healed him was all the doctors in the hospital and all the medical
Yes.
care he received.
And the procedures. And yes, certainly. Certainly.
So the fact that he healed from these spinal injuries is amazing, and I'm so happy he's healthy and living life, and that he
Sure.
has this secret to kind of help him maintain some semblance of an idea of, self-care and taking care of his needs. That's amazing. Selling this as you don't need medical care, you can do this with your own brain, should be illegal. That is
Yeah.
absolutely unacceptable.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, certainly. Um, because he's going to need medical care throughout his life. It's not just, oh, I can walk now. Wonderful, and never see a doctor again. This is a very, I mean, your spine. It's like, you know, that's that's like the most important bone that you've got, and so what's he gonna do? Just tote rocks around with him for the rest of his life and never go to a doctor again? I mean, I'm the first one to admit that the placebo effect does work on me. I know it does. If I have a migraine, I feel better the second I throw that pill in my mouth and swallow it. It's like the gesture of going, and then drinking. I so I'm getting fooled twice because I know that it's the placebo effect, and yet it still works. You know, but I'm not gonna risk my life for a placebo effect.
Well, and the placebo effect is fantastic and amazing, and there is no reason you cannot pair that with proper medical care.
Sure,
So
sure.
if you ate a handful of Skittles instead of migraine meds and felt better, that's great, but it's not addressing the things that were causing your migraine in the first
Migraine to
place.
begin with. Like, do I need my glasses changed? Is there, do I have brain damage from my concussion that I got 6 months ago? What's, is something going on? Do I have a vitamin deficiency? There's so many things that can cause migraines. Um, and, sure, let's take the medication to take the pain away, but that pain may be indicating an underlying biological problem that, the migraine could be a symptom of something much more serious. Sure, let's make the pain go away, but let's find out from a neurologist what actually is going on here.
Yeah. And it wasn't just medical stuff that they were claiming that the secret could help you with. They legitimately, no question, claimed that you could use the secret to make yourself a millionaire, that
Yes.
you could build wealth with the secret. And in Rhonda Byrne's defense, she did. She made $300 million. Uh,
Yeah. And in 30 days, all of this is going to happen to you in 30 days.
yep.
Can't
And
even lose 5 pounds in 30 days. I mean, come on.
and part of the reason this is so insidious is because it then puts all the blame and responsibility of everything on you. So if you
Mhm.
sit and you do the secret and you do their manifestation, and you try and 30 days later it doesn't work, the fault's on you. You did it wrong. You didn't do
Right,
it hard enough. You need to keep doing it longer. There is no acknowledgement that maybe this is not effective or,
right.
any of that. So anytime a solution to a problem is blamed on the user or the individual and not the larger issue or the
Sure.
larger function, that becomes problematic. It's
Yeah,
very similar to a lot of the mainstream diets and, vitamin supplements and like, so for all of the people who are buying like elderberry syrup and stuff at the store in hopes that it's going to cure COVID, well, then if it doesn't cure your COVID, well, that's your fault because you didn't do it right. You didn't use enough. You didn't.
you didn't do it right. Yeah.
And it's the
You
same with,
didn't
well,
pray hard enough. That's the other thing. You didn't pray hard enough. So your your child died. No, your child just had diabetes and needed monitoring and insulin and a diet, but you didn't take your kid to a doctor. You decided that you're going to give it all to God. And again, prayer is wonderful. Prayer works, it soothes yourself. It can cleanse your mind to help with to help other people. But there's more. There's more. You have to accept that you need to do other stuff. And what, you don't have enough rocks? Oh no. Right.
yeah, um it was very uncomfortable to watch. And as I'm watching and listening to all the people talk and hearing all the things that they're saying about how you can, like one lady, like seriously said that she helped a guy start dating 3 women a week for years. And then when he was finally
Oh,
ready for marriage, she helped him manifest a wife out of the air by painting, by focusing all of this energy into painting all these ladies that he wanted to date and the woman he wanted to marry. What kind of nonsense? Oh my God.
and this guy was so arrogant and so conceited. Like, and now I'm beating them off with a stick. Three different beautiful women. Oh, they're just flocking to me. No, they're not. I guarantee you, they're not.
Well, and even if they are, let's assume he's right. He does have all these beautiful women and they are flocking to him. Saying that he is manifesting this removes them of their agency. It makes them pawns,
Yes,
like game pieces in the universe and not actual people who need,
that's a good way of putting it.
yeah, and to say that I am here because it's beneficial for you is an insult to me and my humanity. That's absolutely
hmm
unacceptable.
What are women going to want next? The vote? Jeez.
Yeah, it was very upsetting to watch her. And as a woman, she is, leading this thing. She's saying that she did all this for him. Even if she had some kind of magical ability, had some kind of talisman, love potion number nine, whatever it is that
Right,
she thought she
right.
had, it would be unethical to use that in that way because it robs people of
It is.
their consent and their agency. So even if it did work, which it does not, it would be wrong to use.
Doesn't. Yeah, oh, certainly, because it's almost like you cast a spell on these women, and they have absolutely no, like you said, agency. There's no control over their own bodies, mind, or heart. you know it's just, I mean, I wouldn't want a partner that I achieve by magical means. That's just not acceptable.
Yeah, I'm reminded of like the Selkie myths and the stories of women turning or swans turning into beautiful women and like
Yeah.
essentially
Yeah. Hmm.
stealing women from nature in this way, creating women so that you have this perfect spouse, but
Hmm.
then you have this person there who does not want to be there, who is not given any agency in that situation. That rubs me the wrong way, especially as our
Yeah.
political climate continues the way it's going. I like
Right.
this less and less.
Yeah.
Um, and they really kind of doubled down on this fixes literally every problem. There was no problem that the secret could not fix. There was nothing that could not be made better by the secret, and that should be a telltale sign that something is fraudulent. If this
Right.
one thing solves literally every problem that has ever existed and will ever exist, then it clearly is fraud because otherwise one of
Right.
the people who figured this out a long time ago would have used it to make things a lot better.
Yeah, absolutely. And we wouldn't need medicine, and we wouldn't need doctors, and we wouldn't need science, because all we have to do is think about it and envision it, and paint it, or whatever demented thing they tell you that you can do. I was reminded of Scientology a lot.
Oh, very much.
Very much. Just, you don't need therapy, you don't need medications, you don't need no. Sometimes, as someone who suffers from severe depression, um if I did not take my medication, I wouldn't be here. I would not be able to get out of bed. I might be dead. I don't know. And there's a reason that there are so many different kinds of antidepressants, for example, because there is no one size fits all. Everybody's depression is different, everybody's anxiety is different. And, that's why, okay, this medication isn't working for you. Let's try this one. Okay, let's try this one. But the secret, it is allegedly a one size fits all thing. 8 billion people on the planet, and the secret is going to work for everybody. It just isn't logical. It doesn't make any sense mathematically, scientifically, anyway.
And it puts the blame for every negative thing in your life on you. It says
Yeah.
that if you live in poverty, that is your fault because you did not think positive enough thoughts. If your child
Right.
dies, that is your fault because you did not have positive enough thoughts. If somebody you don't like got elected president, that's your fault because you didn't think your candidate into office. Yeah,
Right.
it puts the responsibility for everything in the world on the shoulders of the individuals. And I'm sorry, my shoulders are not broad enough to hold that. I
No, no, sorry. Learning to ask for help is the first step. It really, really is. And I just can't imagine, like, as a college professor, I can't imagine my students coming to me and saying, "What do I do to get an A?" And my saying, "Just think it. Just envision it. Look, imagine that A on your transcript." No, you have to do the work yourself.
Well, and
Yeah.
imagine the opposite. A student comes to you with blank paper and is like, I wrote a fantastic essay. And you're like, it's blank. And they're like, no, no, I thought I wrote a fantastic essay. I thought it
Yeah.
into existence.
I
And
thought it into existence. You can just see me having done that with my doctoral dissertation. Going to my committee with 75 blank pages and saying, this is the most awesome dissertation you will ever read. Yeah, that would have worked.
yeah, that there was one guy in this whole documentary, and I don't even remember his name because at this point I was at the point where I was not taking notes. I was yelling things at the screen. Um, but he said that the secret worked for him because he was going to have these positive thoughts, and as he had these positive thoughts, they were kind of driving him in certain directions. So he would think, I should create this product. And so he went and created it and turned out it was decent. And then, okay, so I should use this and market it this way. And the power of positive thought compelled him to do things that ended up being profitable for him. That's
Mhm.
fantastic. If you're using this as a way to kind of shape the work you're doing, more power to you. That's great. But to all the rest of them were just saying, no, you just have to think. You just have to think real positive and everything's great.
Mhm.
And no, that's not how this works.
No, certainly not. And what I was looking at every time they showed a different expert, was I read their name and then under their name what they claimed to be. And I saw philosopher a lot and my favorite, visionary. How do I get to be a visionary? I can look out the window and go, it's going to rain soon. Is that a vision?
Well, and that's your fault because you didn't think the rain away.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, certainly not. Well, it's actually a beautiful view of the back of the Cambodian restaurant today. And it's sunny and it's lovely. And now I want Cambodian food again. It wasn't me that did this. It was the tilt of the Earth's axis, the seasonal changes. Unbelievable. But yeah, I was seeing philosopher. What does that really mean in 2025? Anybody can call themselves anything. There were very few people that I saw that actually had legitimate degrees, where I saw like, a doctor of divinity or a PhD or something.
So at this point, I think we should start talking about the individual people who were in this documentary. And
Yes.
again, I am going to talk about them based on what information I have found online. Um, you know, some of these SEC filings and some of them, news stories and some of them just comments about people talking about experiencing them after the documentary. I have
Right.
no expertise in this. I am not
Nor do I.
calling I am not calling anybody anything in a libelous or slanderous way. This is what I am finding on the internet and I am sharing with you.
Right.
Um,
Okay. Disclaimer taken.
so the first person, let's talk about James Arthur Ray, who was one of the biggest contributors. He was in this a lot, and he later went on in 2011. He became a self-help businessman and created a version of this the secret kind of combined with other things and used it to kill three people. He was convicted, found guilty of causing three deaths through negligent homicide because he pushed people to work out in a sweat lodge and it killed three people.
Yes, I remember you telling me this part. Oh, yes, absolutely. That is a criminally negligent homicide right there. Could also be felony murder, depending on what state he was in. But
Yeah, so it
yeah,
looks like he was found guilty of negligent homicide as best as I can
okay,
determine. Um,
right.
and I saw that and I was like, wow, it's weird that one person out of this documentary turned out so terrible.
Mm,
Um, and as I was going through, there were some people who they seem a little woo-woo, but perfectly fine. Mike Dooley appears to be an author, and Marcy
mhm.
Shimoff and Lisa Nichols, and some of these people seem like to this day, they're still just living the secret life and they're very happy with it. And that's awesome. Good for them. And then
Right.
others are closer to James Arthur Ray. Like we
Yeah.
saw Dr. Joe Vitale, MSCD. Roxanne, can you tell me what the MSCD, what does that stand for?
I do not know, but I will look that up while you are talking.
So,
No problem.
as I was looking him up,
MS MSC what?
D,
D.
yeah, as in doctor.
Got it. All I'm getting is Manhattan School for Career Development.
Um, but that was his moniker on the screen. And
I
apparent
got it. I got it. An MS, it is a master's in information science. So it's basically an MS degree.
okay. Um,
Yeah.
apparently he and multiple other of these people went on to, after this, promote MLM scams.
Yeah.
And from what I found, comments from people who had called him, they had, attended a seminar, they'd paid thousands of dollars to attend a seminar, or they had found an advertisement online and called him. One of the one of the things, if you call somebody and you're like, hey, I wanted to take your class or whatever, if they ask you, how much money do you have in savings? Or how much room do you have on your credit cards? That's because
Yeah.
they are getting ready to charge you the most possible money. They want to know how much they can take from you. And that was
Exactly.
exactly what people said when they were trying to follow up and be a part of his educational system afterwards, that they were very much being taken into MLM scams. And
Yes. And the thing is, what they really nickel and dime you for is the supporting material. It's like, okay, I paid $50,000 to go to the seminar, but I also have to buy the book, and I have to buy the cassette tapes or the CDs, and I have to buy the board game or whatever, whatever else, and that's what Bing's, and then of course there's the refresher courses that you should take after 3 months or 6 months or a year. And then there are you need to recruit other people into this whole thing, and then you get more points or whatever. It's exactly like an MLM. Exactly.
And he was just one of the many. Lee Brower, who we
Hmm.
spoke to as part of the documentary, turns out he's a financial scammer who set up a sham company that employed multiple people who later pled guilty to mortgage fraud and wire fraud and
Yeah.
bankruptcy fraud. And his defense was that he didn't know any of these people were involved in any of that. Which, even if that's true, that's a failure on his part as an employer to not know what's going on
Yeah.
underneath him. So best case scenario, he pays attention to nothing. Worst case scenario, he is a financial scammer. Um,
Hmm.
then Dr. Dennis Waitley made up his degrees, not a doctor. They came from a diploma mill, as best as I was able to determine. And he made millions as part of the USANA Health Services MLM. So
Hmm.
selling like expensive vitamins that don't do anything, and all of that.
Right.
So he was part of that. And then even like Jack Canfield, who the guy who wrote the Chicken Soup for the Soul books, who
Mhm.
I actually honestly thought, well, he's a successful author. He doesn't need to, be part of anything worse than that. No. Apparently now, when you go to see him speak, because he's a public speaker and motivational
Oh
speaker and all
yeah.
of that, at the end of it, he hawks MLM essential oils.
Ugh,
That's like his
unbelievable.
deal. Bob Proctor, one of the people they spoke to, set up some Bob Proctor coaching company as part of the Proctor Gallagher pyramid scheme company.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Hmm.
and it was paired along with Vema and iMarkets Live and other very clear pyramid scheme companies that have been found guilty in courts and all of that for being MLM pyramid scheme nonsense. Um, there is a one of the guys they talked to, Bob Doyle. I
Hmm.
I could not find out if it was the same Bob Doyle, but there was a Bob Doyle who was accused of insider trading by the SEC in 2011. And
Hmm.
when I searched for Bob Doyle, The Secret, that came up. I can't guarantee that that's the same Bob Doyle, but
Same
that's
guy.
that popped up.
Okay. Right.
Um, and then Laurel Langmeyer was one of the women that they spoke to, and she was something part of something that is referred to as a forced continuity scammer. And so if you look for like you were talking about when you get an MLM on the phone and they say, "Oh, so now I have to pay you monthly for this, and I can't cancel this subscription no matter what. You're going to make it impossible for me to, get my money back or stop paying you." So she's a part of something of that through of her own accord. She's got something set up there. People seem to not be happy with her
Sounds
online.
like the Columbia Record House deal, which is
Yeah,
basically a deal with the devil, and you can't ever get out of
that pretty
it.
much exactly. Yeah,
They're still after me. I ordered 3 CDs in 1992, and they're still after me. No, absolutely. I mean, I was telling you on the phone yesterday that I worked for this huge corporation in the early 90s, which was the golden age of the motivational speaker. You know, we had Tony Robbins, and then the floodgates just opened. And my company spent $150,000 just roughly for all of these people to come in and wear their sharp $3,000 suits, all gorgeous people, and they basically tried to steal the same thing. And the irony of this whole thing is, even though we had all of these motivational speakers come in, we still got dissolved in a hostile takeover in 1994. So it obviously didn't work long term, and that's another thing I noticed about The Secret. They don't guarantee anything after your initial 30 days is a success. You know,
yeah.
there's nothing long term about it, which I find interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, most of these people seem to have gone on to become motivational speakers. John F.
Hmm.
DeMartini is a motivational speaker and chiropractor, which is kind of like the MLM of the medical world.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's an odd combination. Yeah, right.
Um, and then, like, one of the guys, Dr. John Hagelin, is a quantum physicist and
Hmm.
also was a presidential candidate under the Natural Law Party in 92, 96, and 2000, who
Did
wanted
not
to
know
make
that.
the law of attraction and similar things a bigger part of the government. Um, but the one that I am I'm going to be very careful in how I talk about this gentleman, Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith,
Right,
who is as best as I can tell, Reverend Doctor's all correct. He is the
right.
head of the Agape Spiritual Center. And
Hmm.
what it is and is not, I cannot say. I have never been there. What I can
Hmm.
tell you is I've seen several people online talk about this being a cult or very, very cult-like experience and that they had
Hmm.
difficulty getting out of it. So
Wow.
I I am not going to, you know, I'm not going to be like he leads a cult because I don't know that to be true. I can say that a lot
Right.
of people online seem to think that's the case. And so that's not, if
Right.
you're at,
Anything where that you have trouble getting away from, again, I bring up Scientology. Um, that makes me nervous. That makes me very, very, very nervous. I've never had a problem quitting anything. I've quit jobs, I've changed churches, I've changed belief systems, and no one's ever come after me, that I know of. Um, and that makes me nervous too, because if they can come after you, they can come after your family.
yeah. And
They
so
know where you are. Hmm.
this was just kind of the when you take a look at all of the experts that were brought into The Secret, they, by and large, not 100%, but by and large, seem to be MLM pyramid scheme, like financial grifters,
Hmm.
in a way that I don't know if they actually believe The Secret or if they just felt like they could get people to believe The Secret enough to give them money or what
Hmm.
their whole deal was. But um, it was really an odd experience to Google these people after the documentary and see just how much damage so many of these people have caused over the years.
And they're not stupid people, which is alarming. They're very smart, they're very eloquent, they're very articulate, and they're not blithering idiots. And I think that's very, very dangerous as well. If you look like you know what you're talking about, you can fool a lot of people, certainly.
Yeah, I can, like, pretty much every time I've ever walked through Target wearing a red shirt, I get stopped by somebody looking for help with something targety because because I know, like, I'm moving with purpose. I'm not there like wandering and like I'm getting through the store, and so I look like I'm dressed the part and I look like I know what I'm doing, and it causes people
Hmm.
to reach out and be like, "Hey, can you help me?" This feels like this is a very same thing. This is the spiritual version of the red shirt at Target.
Yes. Oh, yes. I am often asked if I work places that I don't work. Because I look like I know what I'm doing, and if you look like you know what you're doing, that's half the battle right there.
It, and one of the things that this documentary really made me think about is that education and intelligence don't necessarily go hand in hand. You can have expertise that is an inch wide and a mile deep, so to speak. So you know a lot
Yep.
about one thing and frickin' nothing about anything else. Um, and you can be somebody who's not very educated but has, solid intelligence and understanding of the world around you. Education is not the make all or be all of
Oh,
everything.
no, I can vouch for that personally. Formal education that doesn't necessarily mean street smarts or logical reasoning or or anything like that. Certainly, certainly not.
And so it was especially obvious going through and seeing how many of these people who had doctor attached to their name or who had letters indicating that they had serious education and following their
Right.
name, um, who they were not using that education in any real way, or they were using it to give themselves some type of authority so that you
Right.
would feel trusting of them because they had the word doctor attached to their name. It reminds
Hmm.
me very much of like Dr. Oz, from what I understand, is a fantastic heart surgeon, but
Hmm.
everything else that man says is garbage. And I do not like that he gets the attention that he does because he is officially a doctor. He's a heart surgeon.
Right.
And so every
Exactly.
time he went on TV, and his deal seemed to be, if you pay me, I'll hawk your product. I'll tell people it's great. And that people watched him be a doctor and say, "Oh, well, if this doctor likes it, then obviously it's going to be good for me," with no concept of whether or not being a doctor makes him a good person or educated in
Exactly.
any other instance or any other topic. And a lot of these people were very, very much the same.
Right.
So like doctors who are quantum physicists who, when I went looking online, they had a lot of other PhD people responding, being like, "That guy is such a quack. He's a voodoo scientist at
Oh,
best." Like, and so he went and he got the formal education, but it doesn't mean he did anything good or healthy or right or productive with it.
exactly. Right.
Yeah, and this whole time, like, I'm watching this and I'm thinking, like, this is spiritual crypto. This is this is not like,
Nice. Nice term. Spiritual crypto. I like that.
and they one of the biggest things that I think really made them able to sell this was they took solid concepts, things that made sense or even maybe were actual tools that you can use, like psychological tools. They took some CBT and DBT um,
Mhm.
things that to help fight depression and negative self-talk, which are excellent tools that work with your
Yeah.
therapist.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, but they took that and they spun it out and they turned it into this, and
They corrupted it into this. Yeah.
yeah, and I was so frustrated to watch as they took these concepts, this gratitude rock, these CBT and DBT, actions and thoughts, and they turned it into a religion. And I think what most
Hmm.
people are missing when they're watching this is that this is a religion. And when I say it's a religion, I don't mean like it moves and quacks like a duck and talks like a duck and worships like
Right.
a duck. No, I mean it legitimately is the Church of New Thought. This was a religious
Hmm.
movement that was started in the early 1900s.
You know, yeah.
Yeah. So this is for real, like an actual legitimate religion, but founded as a religion. And so it was reading about the history of this and where this comes from was so interesting and kind of especially because a lot of the books that The Secret is based on or kind of built around or sold in tandem with um, are all in the top 10 selling self-help books of all
Hmm.
time. And it's really interesting to see how much self-help, how much of the really best-selling self-help is the same 5 or 10 concepts repackaged over and over again.
Right. Right. And there's always going to be people that are going to try to take advantage of people that don't have scientific knowledge or who are desperate. I mean, during the Great Depression, we had rainmakers and the medicine shows and snake oil sales, but 100 years later, we have this. That's dangerous, you know?
But maybe we'll get a fantastic Broadway musical and Hugh Jackman can be in this one too.
Okay, see, there we go. And we've come full circle. What do I need to do to get Hugh Jackman into my life? Yeah, there you go.
Thank you for listening to Real Stories, Real Problems with your hosts, Rachel and Roxanne. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the law of attraction and the documentary The Secret. Join us again next week for a glimpse into another financial problem and a documentary all about it. If you enjoyed our show today, please remember to like, subscribe, and leave us a review on your podcast app. Thanks for listening. See you again next week. Excellent. And then,
Okay. All right, I'm gonna go have Cambodian food and maybe I'll run into Hugh Jackman.
excellent plan.